I just want to make a couple reminders about what are pet peeves for judges as we head out to EU Thailand. And remember, what's going to happen is your PM will come out and give a harm and definitions. Sometimes they don't like to define certain words. They don't like to leave the scope. If the PM does not define the words or the scope, I often tell my opposition teams to define the words appropriately and the scope to benefit them in terms of the resolution. Like, for example, in terms of helping the Syrian rebels, you need to define exactly what groups you're talking about, you know, because one person rebel could be another person's terrorist, or one person's terrorist could be another person's rebel, and you can play around with the definition. I'll leave that hint for later. The harm, there are three ways to dispute the harm. You acknowledge there is a harm, but Gov fails to solve. You say there's no harm, so there's no need for a Gov case. Or you say there is a harm, and the status quo is solving the harm anyway. You gotta do one of those three things. The other thing that happens is when they do their model or principle, what often happens is the opposition team does not attack the model or principle. They attack one but not the other, or they attack the principle but they don't attack the model. You need to attack both of these things. Especially on the model or principle, these are the most basic attacks for the leader of opposition to do. You need to make sure you go out and do this. And then there'll be some advantages or some justification for the PM. Okay. Now, another pet peeve is now, you know, we've had the definition, the harm, we had the model and principle. And normally your model has like 1, 2, 3 items in it. There's enforcement, there's funding, there's what's going to happen. So he's basically going to say, that's, if you just count that as 3 things, the harm is 1 thing and advantages are 4 things. Another thing, you have basically 5 things happening here. You have a harm, you have these 3 items, and then you have, so you have 5 things. So when the LO comes up, LO, before you even start, you have 5 rebuttals. Okay? Please make sure you are very timely and you spend about half your time on your rebuttals. A lot of times what happens is we have a rebuttal case that just goes on and on and on. The guy starts doing his own case side arguments with like 2 minutes left. Because at 4 minutes, you finish your 5 rebuttals. Make sure you have 5 rebuttals. If you don't do 5 rebuttals, I don't give you full points for engaging. Okay? You need to attack what the leader of opposition has said. Then you're going to do your counter model or stance. And then you need to provide arguments for me about why the status quo is better or why the opposition case is better. And then you do your split. A lot of people think, oh, I'll just rebut everything they say, so you're running a negative case. But in all Asian style, which is EU Thailand, you need to make sure that not only do you rebut what they say, but you provide a solution to their harm. You must solve their harm. That is your burden as a leader of opposition. If you fail to do this, then you fail and you will lose. Because when your DLO gets up, it's not going to be a situation that is very productive for you. So what have I talked about? I've talked about PM. Make sure you stick to your case, do your definition, your harm, your model, and your advantages. That's your job. If you fail to do that, I can't give you max points. Also speak for time. If you speak less than the appropriate time, I can't give you max points. To be average, you need to do your job and speak for the appropriate time. LO, you must come up and engage. You must deny the harm. Gov fails. There is no harm. Gov, no need for Gov. Or the harm is being addressed by status quo. And then you need to have your 5 rebuttals to match up to the 5 things the PM talked about. Then make sure your LO, that your speech is divided so that half of your speech is rebuttals, the other half is your counter model. Then you talk about your own argumentation about why the opposition side solves the harm and is a better situation to be in. Okay. DPM, your job is to rebut these things. One last pet peeve. DPM, you're going to come up. The leader of opposition probably had 5 rebuttals. So you have to rebuild those 5 rebuttals. And you have to attack the counter model and their arguments. So you can have 8 arguments before you even start your case. You can group things together if you don't think you have enough time. But if you don't engage the counter model as DPM, then when that DLO gets up, he'll say the counter model stands, and your whip's gonna have to address that situation, and that's gonna be a really tough situation to do. Okay, so the pet peeves for most adjudicators is time management, and people get upset about the scores we give you. But honestly, if you don't do your job, you don't make time, you are not going to be average. You will not have the average score. You will only have a score above average if you do those things. The second pet peeve is make sure you rebut everything. This is my daughter helping us out. Say hello.
Hello.
Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Yay. Moving on. So finally, in the case that we're talking about, watch your time, do your job, and one last thing. Please, please, POI. People don't POI. Very boring. But if you're a PM, you're reading a speech to me. If you don't POI, you don't take a POI, you don't engage in a POI, I can't tell how smart you are. I'm not going to give you a score above average. Unless they POI, unless you take POIs, or unless they have to offer, they'll offer POIs. But unless you take a POI, I can't tell how smart you are. You're reading the speech to me. And lastly, if you're a PM and you don't take a POI and you're short on time, or you go way over time, that's poor time management, you will not get an average score. That is our take on scoring. Hope that helps you guys out.